fix that up real quick. Ah, you bumped into you, huh? Alright. Try that. Anybody hear that? Just knocked something over. Alright. Said I would try to move something where I could see it better and just knock something over. Let's see, what button did I press over here? There we go, that's better. That's a terrible song. Alright, where were we? Before I made that mess. Alright, I was going to revise this little thing I've been working on here. There we go. Alright. So there's page 1, 2 and 3. Guess I need to mark the page on this one. Page 4, wrong pencil, I think. Page 5. I think that's the F, and this is the H. But I was using this pencil. Good evening. Look, comicses, maybe. Alright. Just knocked some stuff over, so hopefully I'll recover from that. I know it's evening, right? Instead of morning. That's where I put the first page down at. So I kind of wanted to back up and revise the stuff I did earlier today. That goes up there. Yeah, let's see. I found this guy, I forget the name, it was some comics, like how-to blog page. I wrote it down on the file name so I wouldn't forget where I found it, but it was on the page somewhere in the original version. But I was looking for, you know, 2-page spread that would fit on 8.5 by 11, like that. And but all the ones I found, they had like the full gap in the middle, even this one. So I just took this one that I found, smushed it together, got rid of all the extra info we had on the page. He had like all the proportional information size off to the side, but I just really wanted this as a 2-page spread with the safe margin in between. And he still had like the wider gap between them as if they were separate pages. I'm like, well, I don't know how that's useful if you're trying to like put 2 pages up against each other. Even if you're treating them 100% separately, you'd still want to have this, you know, butted up next to each other. So I have these. So I found that today. I was like, oh, that'd be handy to have. And then I found this one a while ago, which I like. I don't remember where I found this one. I think I put it down in the file name. But basically, it has like a full... you put a whole comic on one page, which I thought was pretty handy. And then it has this same kind of layout. So the little the gap here It's the same as the gap here, which I like better. So I used that to do, I was like thumbnailing out some simple stuff here. Tried to go back and revise this so it's not so much of a ending right there. But so some thumbnails I did a while ago where I was taking, oh, I'll take this tree hopper character, calling him. So this is kind of in that Bramble world, but it's set further back. So it's like 80 years after humans have landed, I think is what I'm going to go with. But this will be this guy right here. And not totally happy with the face yet. I need to go back and work on that some more. But I did kind of some, some ink tests with some concepts here. Some splatter in there if you look really close. White splatter too. Down here. But I thought that would be I was playing around with that calligraphy nib that I've been using lately, combining it with other things. But yeah, I've got that guy out as like I thought he was just kind of less I feel like this character is like a little bit less consequential than the other ones I've been playing with in terms of who he is and what he does. It's more of like I was trying to think of something simple like Space Girl. Travis Charet's little Space Girl thing, right? And someone I could just like make some simple 5-6 page long story where I kind of just like add it on gradually. So intent with this one is he's just arriving at a story here is basically he's arriving here. This is his it's a glider slash plane thing. I'm calling them sliver ships, I guess, because they're super narrow and long. And again, it's set about 80 years after they initially landed. Anyway, he's going out as they call it tree hopper to they think they've found another colony ship from the original crash, and he wants to go investigate it. So he's got the little these where's these what do they call these blade prosthetics to kind of hop around in the environment more easily, which doesn't factor into this one really just yet. He has different devices he's using here, but I wanted to revise some of this drawing here. Just feel like I felt like I was getting more dynamic as I went along. As far as I got. So anyway, I thought I would come on and work on that for a little bit. Stick that out of the way. There's never enough room. You get a big giant table and it's still not enough. Still not enough room. So anyway, that's what we got going on. So I wanted to come back in and, even though this is considered like the rough layouts and things like that, I still wanted to refine it some more, so I had a better map of where I was going with it. And those for that are following, Rob Liefeld put out a podcast recently. He was really spilling the beans on industries, his opinion on where industry has fallen off. Which I thought was pretty entertaining. Let's see. So using 2H here just because I think it helps with certain aspects when I erase back with the kneadable eraser. It kind of leaves a lot of it behind. Let's see. Just make sure those eyes are level. They feel pretty good. Yeah, they're okay. Yeah, this would just go out a lot further, I think. Want to match my reference correctly. Hi, Bosch. Welcome upstairs. Yeah, it's much better. Get your bed out for you, Bosch, just in case you want it. All right. Lower that in. Always got to accommodate the dog. Right, Bosch? To kind of just rework this area. Good evening, people popping in. Good evening. How are we doing out there? Good evening. Good evening, people popping in. How's it going out there? Just thought I'd work on this little short here. I'm going to set up so I can expand it forward more easily while I'm finalizing the other story. Good evening. Good evening. I appreciate that. Right now, the working title is Bramble World Tree Hopper. So, it's a concept project I've been working on for a while, but decided to start putting together some stories for it. I have a different story treatment than I put together, but I thought it would be a nice idea to put together some shorter, less consequential stories. So, the Bramble thing is basically humans have settled on this planet that I'm calling Bramble for now. Might come up with a different name later, but basically they settle here, and the planet itself looks like a giant tangle of plants. So that's where the kind of the name comes from, and anyway, there's evidence of like a past civilization there, but all the people are, whatever was there is gone. So whatever they were, whatever was going on is stopped. There's some artifacts, but there's no like biological remains or any of that. There's just some artifacts that have been left behind. And but anyway, with the humans, when they landed, this is set 80 years after they landed right here, and basically something happened on their colony ship. A bunch of them had to evacuate very quickly, and as a result, some of the ships that landed on the planet, they crashed and never heard from again. So this guy is investigating one of those crash sites. So he's arrived in his sliver ship, and he's going to go out on a little expedition here to investigate this specific site to see what happened, or if there's anything useful that they can take. They can bring people back and collect for the colony that's of survivors that remain together. So he's heading out to. He's arrived on this site on this kind of glider ship. Check out this landing craft that crashed. See if maybe somebody's there. It's hard to say. Maybe there's survivors, or probably not, but so I was sketching it out today. That's what we got here. So that's as far as I got. I'm kind of telling a little bit of the story of the crash in here, because he's just kind of talking to himself as he's going through. So it's an indie little project. I was supposed to be me starting off on this concept thing, and then so I was working on these as like a world building project, a world building trap, as say Jake Parker might call it. Started coming up with some stories, so I thought I should start locking those stories down. I forgot to take off my hoodie. Ugh. It's very lightweight, but it's just getting warmer in here. Probably because I got a sleepy dog under my feet. Or I'm sitting under a light. Probably that. But yeah, the planet itself, it looks like a giant tangle of plants. Like somebody had taken a ball of vines and weeds and just like rolled them up together. And it's led to some limitations on the colonists because of how they crashed on the planet. They they don't have enough fuel or the right kind of energy to get back above the planet. There's not really any fossil fuels, and so they're kind of just stuck. And there hasn't been contact with Earth in a very, very long time. And the ship they took, it's the kind of the colony ship they took. They don't have like faster than light travel or anything like, say, in Star Trek or Star Wars or whatever. It took them a very long time to get here, say like 1,000 years or something like that. So they were in a generational colony ship to get here. And I think we revised. So that's supposed to be his plane. He's kind of standing below it over here off to the side. that frame him in here. So that's what's going on. That's the story. But I thought I'd do this one like 5 or 6 pages at a time. Ink it as I go. See how much I can get done. So that's what we're rolling on here. Trying to plan out the shadows a lot before I get over invested in anything. Indicate some of the things that are, say, different than with their technology and their things that they have access to. Anyway, these are kind of my layouts, my roughs, whatever you want to call them, for this. So yeah, have to let me know what you think. Hopefully it's not just, you know, okay or good drawing, but, you know, some good storytelling is the goal here. Alright, I feel like those are all good updates. Probably make a mess of it, but that's okay, because, you know, that's how you learn, right? Alright, on to revise the next page. And then we'll jump into the. I'm gonna do a double page. Alright, you just sit there. I'll put that over there. Alright. Table's actually at an angle, so if I just set something down, it'll slide right off. Let's see, let's move that back up and over. Like that, like still too long. Compared to the other one, that is. Working over here for now. These are wisps of clouds because it's coming in from a height. Probably lock these panels into the safe zone rather than letting them bleed over the edge. You know? Alright, we got a spammer. Let's get rid of that real quick. Boom. Where was I? Good evening. Just dropped on the floor. Sorry about that, Bosch. I know, we don't like it when things fall down. The dog finds the falling of things to be very upsetting. As one should, right? It's very inappropriate when things fall down and make noise. Nobody likes that, as far as I can tell. Let's see. I don't think these will take up this much room in the actual one, but it's helpful to think about it as a placeholder, though. I think. I need one of those brushes for cleaning up eraser. Good evening. Alright, I guess I should move that where you can see it, right? Actually, I think I'll move you so you can see it. I'll just leave it where I have it. Oop, there we go. Alright, so next is, I'm going to see that. Good evening. Need a big. I guess it's almost sideways, so that might do. Okay. I went the wrong way on that. Flipped the perspective by accident. Probably wouldn't see much of the interior there. You. That's better. Vroom up. That thing getting moving, right? Good evening, people popping in. How are we doing? Right, Bosch? My dog is always dubious. He questions my values. It's like, I don't know, man. I think we could be doing other stuff than this. this will fall outside of the view, so I don't need you anymore. How's Bosch doing down there, huh? I always love the look of dubious doubt that he gives me. It's like, I don't know what you're doing, human. Good evening, people popping in. Answers that question. Good evening. Yeah, just let me know if there's any questions out there. I don't mind talking while working. I just don't always know what topics are of interest to people. And who's in here. I mean, I can see people kind of coming and going on the Instagram, but otherwise it's a little vague. You know? Sorry, Bosch. Yeah, I wish I probably should get a fan or something to blow the air out of this room, just because it, you know, it's the room where all the computer stuff is. I think that's why it gets so warm in here. Well, in terms of, you know, getting work done, inspiration can come from anywhere, right? So you can be inspired by something that upsets you, something that, you know, gives you joy. Anything can be inspiration. It's a matter of just, you know, keeping track of what those things are and then using them. But in terms of getting work done, it usually helps me to get into some kind of groove. So, you know, I have to have a certain amount, I have to be kind of, I think, relaxed to a certain degree to work. You know, I have to kind of like relax my mind so I can focus on the thing that I'm working on. But that's different than being inspired. Right? Well, yeah, it depends on what I'm trying to do. So if you're trying to like make something more aggressive, sometimes it can help to, like to imagine something that's a little bit more, you know, aggressive, or something like if you're trying to draw something that's sad, and you're really trying to get the emotion across, you're trying to design, it can help to, you know, think about things that have made you sad, or things that would make you sad. Or things that make you upset. But in terms of actually like sitting down and drawing, you know, you can't be so upset or so sad that you can't work, right? So you need to be relaxed and focused enough to like have that kind of empathy, but also be able to sit down and actually get something done. Because otherwise you're just going to be very, very unfocused. So it's a mix of different things, I think. Like I get a little bit annoyed when I drop something. Like I dropped my ruler a minute ago. That's like, alright. Because I have to get out of my chair and get it. It's way down on the floor at the bottom. And it's my fault. Right? It's a little bit annoying. For some reason Instagram has stopped posting over there. Let me restart that. That's not showing up there. That's interesting. Let's see if that works. Yeah, so I think that's the, yeah, it's not just saying maybe between a pro, right, and someone who's just an amateur, someone who's playing around with it, they were kind of rely a lot. So a lot of times, like being this, like being pro and being not being pro is like your ability to sit down and accomplish something, whatever your mood might be. And so if you're not able to sit down and work, even if you're upset or tired or whatever, stressed, then you're not a pro. It's not that you should ignore things that are important to you, but if you got to get stuff done, sorry, Bosch. That's important. Be able to kind of get your accomplish your goals, even if you're having trouble. Let's see, and that'll be up here. And that'll help me kind of fix that in here. Better. Alright, that's better. Yeah, so part of like establishing like professionalism is I think like something just as simple as like having a schedule that you stick to. And I'm not 100% on that all the time, in terms of developing things like this. I get distracted by the things that I'm paid to do. Like my teaching job. But that's important too, right, Bosch? No, just changing our spot. Well, I think it's a lot about directing that mood into what you want. I think one of the things that helps too, if you want to have to be able to get work done, is have like a designated space to work. So one of the things, if you're always like fighting your layout, your setup, then that makes it hard to work, because that's an additional frustration that can kind of pop in the way and get in the way of getting things done, right? So by not having a designated space to do the things you need to do, you have to always set up, and that can kind of delay that process of getting yourself arranged and working. Because the longer it takes to get to it, like the harder it is to get started, right? So like I know for me, like if it like going out and going grocery shopping is always a hassle in my brain. Like I always try to wait until I absolutely have to go, and then I'll go. Just because it's not something I particularly enjoy. Right. Or I need a haircut, and I learned to give it to myself, but it's still a bit of a process because I have to, prepare a space to do that in and clean up afterwards and all that. It's still I like it better than going to get a haircut, but that's me. But that's true of anything you do. That's my point. But yeah, if there's like a project you want to do, you got to have a space for it. You got to have time designated for it, and you got to have specific things you want to do. So I know I wanted to take the thumbnails I'd done and convert them into these pages here. So and to do that, I needed to find something that was a bit more precise. So I found a guy who put up a comic book layout that's like 2 pages next to each other. But for whatever reason, he didn't actually buttress them up against each other so they would serve as a 2-page spread. I knew I wanted to do a lot of these pages where you'd have images, like the one on the bottom I've got here, that's stretching all the way across both pages. In order to do that, you have to get rid of the trim marks and squish the pages up to each other so you have the bleed area, which is right here, lined up against each other. And this guy, and all the ones I found, they all had them kind of separated out. One had a diagram that worked great, but it still wasn't what I was looking for, so I had to spend time figuring that out, just because I'm not professional at this at all. And once I figured out, then I just dropped it into I'm using Affinity Photo lately instead of Photoshop, just because I'm really annoyed by all the AI nonsense. But drop it into Affinity Photo and adapt it, and then he had a bunch of extra information at the top and on the sides that I got rid of, and then I was able to expand it out so it was a little bit larger, so I could put 2 pages up next to each other. And so, it took me a little effort to kind of get it all organized, but now I've got that file set up, and I did make sure when I put it back on my computer that I labeled it with his name on there. Ooh, I don't remember right now, but it's on some blog. Little things like that, they can kind of get in your way, but you have to kind of push through. It's like a minor annoyance. And they happen all the time where you delay doing something you should do. Like I teach at a university, and we just finished up this semester. So I turned in my grades on Tuesday. Finished grading, things mostly the day before, and then a little bit in the morning, and then submitted my grades. And then I saw today that someone, which was the day before yesterday when I did all that, I think. But I saw someone today had uploaded a project. This is a graduating senior. I didn't fail the student, but they got a bad grade on their senior studio class because they didn't turn in stuff they were supposed to have turned in a week ago. And so I'll see if I get an email from this person, because if I do, maybe I'll do the grade change thing, but if not, I won't bother with it. I don't want to delay their graduation over this. But nobody cares about GPA once you're out of school. So as long as it passes the student, I'm not worried about it. Yeah, it's interesting, what's going on with it. I've been posting news into my stories just because it seems like people are interested in that. My personal preference would be to not pay any attention to it at all. But I teach at a university, and there's people at the university, they want students to start using it, and I don't get why. When it causes, so many obvious problems. And, it's funny because I'll have these discussions, and these people are like, well, give us some evidence, and I provide them evidence, and they don't care. Like, well, I can accept myself from this or that. And I'm just like, no, I don't think you can. I can't. So I don't use it at all. And I'll hear people have like a moderate position. Like I talked to a friend of mine, and he doesn't like the image generators, but he likes ChatGPT. And I'm just like, you do realize that that's built on the exact same data set as your image stuff. It's all stolen from other people, and repackaged. Like it's not any better than the image stuff, and any less harmful to what it does to you. I think that's one of the things that people don't realize is the harm it does to the people that use it. And that's one thing I've tried to emphasize. To me, it was obvious that it would cause certain harms to people cognitively. Like if you rely on a machine for your ideas, you're going to stop having your own ideas. And one of the problems too, like with these large language models, is they're an aggregate of already existing data, which is very different than how a person. Yeah, so what it literally does, and there's been studies that have demonstrated this, that makes people less able to do critical thinking. But for me, it's been interesting because people seem to accept themselves from that. I don't know why. Why they think that that's how it's going to work for themselves. But anyway, I was pointing out this out to my friend, and he just hadn't really thought about it that way. I don't know that he cares. I don't usually try to convince people of things anymore. I just tell them what I think and why. And I don't worry too much if it changes their mind or not, because I just understand how people work, how they think, and most people, including probably myself to a certain degree, really don't care that much about rational arguments. I mean, I think I do. I like to think I do, but I'm pretty sure I'm like most other people and not as easily persuaded by those kinds of things as much as I should be. But it's like, it's not even like cheating. It's just like you're removing yourself from the equation, right? You're removing your cognitive abilities, your ability to think, your ability to act, your ability to understand what it is that you're doing. So it's like, I think it's even worse than that. It's like, it's one thing is like, I know people sometimes cheat to like, get past something that they consider unpleasant. For me, it's just like, well, I like doing all of the art things. I like for me, like a lot of what happens in it is the discovery process. And, I don't consider, the research and the coming up with the ideas and the executing of those ideas, the development of them, the stories I want to tell. I don't consider any of that to be tedious. But I've certainly met a lot of artists that do. Like I know artists, they don't want to come up with ideas for backgrounds or their own pictures. And that just doesn't make any sense to me, personally. Sorry, I've been drawing over here. But maybe I've just got a weird perspective on the world. I don't know. Because I have met people, they just don't. They seem to think that the more you do, or the more that you put out into the world, like the better an artist you are, or the more profitable you'll be, or whatever. And I just don't think that's true. I think the audience, if you want the audience to come to you for the things that you do and the things that you love or enjoy or want to share, if that's why you want them to come to you, then it needs to be you. If it just needs to be generic product, then sure, can be any random collection of whatever, of widgets. but you know, if you want people to work with you explicitly, then so I think I need to make this thing bigger. Don't like that. Even though I just spent a bunch of time drawing that on the inside. I think it needs to be bigger. That's why we do these layouts though, right? To figure that out. But, you know, if you've got something you want to share with the world and with other people and, you know, stories you want to tell, then, you know, why on earth would you hand that over to some algorithmic process? Yeah. Well, it's like, you know, I have a funny story. I never cheated in school. Maybe it was lack of opportunity or whatever. Or I just, you know, I wouldn't know how for the things that I did. Probably. So I don't want to declare any kind of moral superiority. But I did do a thing where I was taking this human anatomy class, but it was for people who wanted to be doctors. And it was really, really intense. Like, you know, memorize, like this, the stuff I wanted to know as an artist, we covered in like the first, you know, couple of weeks, you know, the bones and the muscles. And I didn't realize just kind of how in-depth this course would be, you know, how much I would have to memorize. And a lot of it was stuff that I didn't, you know, have any particular interest in. Like the lymphatic system or the nervous system and, you know, things like that where, you know, well, it's all, you know, useful, relevant information on its own. Yeah, it wasn't as relevant for me as a art student at the time. And when I went in for the test, which is, you know, they have this big testing center where you sit down and you have to, you know, you take your test and you go sit down. People are taking all kinds of different tests around you during that time period. But I sat down and looked at mine. I was like, you know, I don't actually know this information. And, you know, I've got other things I've got to do. And I'm really taking this class as an elective, not as a required class. So, you know, I didn't need it to graduate. And so I looked at that and I was like, you know, I started off trying to answer every question very carefully. And then I looked at it and I'm like, you know, I don't have time for this, so I'm just going to guess. And so I just made sure I guessed within like the number of potential answers there were. So if there's 5 potential answers or 4 or 6 or 7 or whatever on the Scantron sheet, I just guessed within that parameter. And when I walked out and I looked at the screen to see what my test score was, because they just put it next to your student ID, I got like a 65% on the test, and because the type of course it was graded on a curve, and so it meant I passed. I think I got like a C or something on the test. And I guessed all the answers pretty much, because I just didn't know. Didn't know them. So I like to tell that story to my students, even though it's not very good advice to do that. But sometimes, you know, you got other priorities you got to deal with, and find a creative solution for it. And yeah, so I got lucky. In that I passed. It was funny because I think they could tell because there was like a second phase where you would go into the cadaver lab, because it was a live, dead cadaver, you know, an actual cadaver, like a dead body in the classroom kind of class. And so there was one phase where you'd go in and they would just kind of hold up different body parts or pieces of body parts and say, "Do you know what this is? Can you, you know?" And then you have to write it down on your thing. And I got some of those right, but not all of them. They had an extra credit phase where they would show you like some anatomical slices of the figure, and I had no idea what any of those were. They were like, "Oh no, go ahead and try and guess. It's okay." So I think they could tell I was like really stressed out and unhappy in the lab. You know, that I didn't know what the answers were going to be, because it was a lot more than I wanted or needed, and the major I was in, illustration, was pretty intense all by itself back then. I assume it still is, but yeah, so these are little floating, almost like jellyfish, but they float in the atmosphere because it's an alien planet here. So they're just floating along with this guy. So I thought that'd be a good kind of rhythmic movement to take us out to where we see this crashed ship out here, which is his ultimate destination. And some broken bramble bits over here sticking up out of the ground. Lots of clouds breaking up on the surface. Yeah, but yeah, again, I don't. I like to tell that story, but I'm always like, don't ever do that, because you may not be as lucky as I was. Probably won't be, It's like, hoping an engine problem will go away in your car, You just, you don't want to rely on that for very much. Yeah, there's the ship over there on the right. But yeah, it's it's a good story, I guess, to tell. Well, it's nice about like teaching new students. Most every semester is or every year is I don't have to. I can share the same stories over and over again. Deep ideas, I don't know. I get better at telling stories too, which is nice. But deep ideas, I don't know. There's some things that I'm interested in, but I'm really more. If I'm trying to like tell a story, I want to be more about the characters, like the world that they really live in, for themselves, rather than me trying to kind of force like some kind of symbolic meaning on it. I read a long time ago, where there was this kind of you look at Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, right? They're very famous for the world building stories that they build. Tolkien for Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and C.S. Lewis for Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And but they had very different kind of approaches to their storytelling, and I prefer the Tolkien one. So Tolkien, he felt like his stories, he liked for them to have applicability. Yeah, they were teachers at the same school. I forget, Oxford or whatever they were at. But they worked together. Spent a lot. They hung out. They workshopped their stories together. But Tolkien didn't like Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe because it was symbolic. So the lion is Jesus, and the different characters like Peter is Peter, and one of the kids is Judas, and they're direct symbols of these characters from the Bible, basically. And Tolkien's approach was more about applicability, in that people could take Aragorn or the Ring or the orcs or whatever, and they can think about that as being like something that they can relate to, and rather than as like a symbol of something very specific from mythology or history or religion or an idea of something. And I think I prefer that. So I think you kind of get closer to that kind of thing if you just put characters into a scenario and kind of see, direct them in a story, but have them kind of live it out. And I'm sure meaning will creep in that way. It might be useful. But I don't know that I have anything particular to teach anybody either. I'm not like, oh, I am a very wise man who has deep ideas about philosophy and morality. Mostly my morality deals around not bossing people around and taking their stuff without asking. I kind of stick to that, being honest. But I do prefer, I do like honest humanity in things. So, but a lot of people like, that symbolism, that allegorical approach to art making. So they'll put specific things in there to make symbols. And all that kind of stuff, and I'm sure a certain degree of meaning creeps into what the things that I do, but I don't tend to spend a lot of time doing that. Like I did like some paintings a while back where I was kind of playing around with masks and superpowers. So I had these masks I'd bought, and then I was I was having like had these Super Mario Brother mushrooms. These plushy ones that I'd found at shops when I lived in Hong Kong. I still have some of those mushrooms around here somewhere. I was kind of putting them together, saying something about the masks we wear, kind of giving us power. But again, that's it's very loose. And I'd rather have that applicability over direct symbolism. To a certain degree, I like, tell stories about hubris just because I think it speaks to my own faults. Well, I appreciate that. Again, I have a lot of thoughts, certainly, but I don't consider those thoughts to be anything, unique or distinctive in that way. It's more just like, well, I like working hard. I like things that are, honest, and, abhor violence, generally speaking. So here's where he's going. There's a big crashed colony ship here. These symbols we might recognize, though, that are on here. What time is it? Almost 9:30. I should probably come to a stop soon, so I can get up bright and early tomorrow. So probably something in here, about that conflict of power, and in the overall kind of overarching narrative of what I've kind of assembled here. But I'm trying to not do anything that's like too like, oh, well, this is an American president, and this is this guy in this other country, and that's what they mean. It's more of a the applicability thing. Things that those things can do to us if we let them. It's like I'm in an interesting spot at my university where I've been working hard to create an illustration concentration within the major, and That's 4:20. Okay, must be over on the European side. Yeah, I'm gonna be shutting down in probably a couple minutes anyway. But I've been working hard to make this kind of illustration track within our major so students can focus on that more, because there's a lot of interest in that, and students like that, and so I want to help support that. And I've been asking for feedback from people as I've been working on it, but I haven't really gotten any. And so I'm kind of going over with them recently, and people are like, "Hey, what about this? Or what about that?" And I'm like, "Well, I've been asking for so I don't want to be the only person making these decisions, because I think it ought to be everybody working together to make these decisions. But most of the people have been unwilling to speak up or say anything, or when I've gotten some of it from them, they've been like, "Well, I don't want to do this or that because of this or that reason." I'm like, "Well, that doesn't really work, because it means that a student doesn't know what class they're taking if everyone teaching a class a certain way, differently from each other. It kind of breaks the the student's ability to learn and transfer those learnings to another course if everybody's teaching everything in a different way." And so suddenly, I'm coming to the end of this. People are suddenly wanting to contribute because they're, bothered by, the things I've been writing down, trying to organize things, even though no one's really been volunteering that. Where I'll get very kind of explicitly contradictory feedback, which is also a problem. Because they're like, "Yeah, they need to have tighter skills and more focus this and that." And I'm like, "Okay, well, let's do this." And like, "Oh, I don't want to, close off their creativity completely." And I'm like, "Well, that's not really what we're doing. We narrow it here and then we expand it as we go." And people freak out about that. But then they don't have any suggestions on what it should be. And so I get confused by that. Maybe that's something I ought to put in here, because I have seen that kind of thing, that abdication of authority, until people have to start dealing with it. I've certainly seen that before. It could be worth something in here. But see, it's 9:30, huh? Okay. So I was waiting, when the opportunity came to start up this illustration concentration, I raised my hand and say, "Yeah, I'll lead the way on that. I'll work on that, because it's something that I care about, and I think it will add a lot, and it's worth doing, and to clean up certain aspects of the program." And given lots of opportunities for people to give their feedback on it, and they've just kind of haven't said anything. So it's like I've been working on it for a year, and suddenly they're like, "Oh, we want to give input on this and that, or we don't want any input on this or this other thing." I'm like, "Well, where have you been all this time?" That's, human nature on display, right? Anyway, I'm going to call it there for the night. It's 9:30 p.m. here. I think that's a good spot to pause. Probably back on. Well, it's not, I'm not I think I'm just going to get my way anyway, because I'm the only one taking action. So, and I think, the changes we make, even if people are only aligning with it to a certain degree, it still works. So anyway, here we go. There's the guy. He's looking out. He's getting ready. Looking down. You see where he's jumping down to. He jumps out. We see him falling there. And then this starts to deploy there. And then he's got his little balloon he's flying around with. And he's flying out to the site. And this is where I was stopping here. So here's the crashed colony ship. And he lands on it. And then he sends off his drone. So that's where I was going with that. And then I wanted to do one more page. It was like finish off that scene. Anyway, yeah, have a good night. We'll talk at you all later.